So Jim Harbaugh, not surprisingly, is leaving Michigan to coach the LA Chargers. That is a franchise that has done practically nothing in recent years. And the amazing thing about the Chargers is they may be the only team in this category. They have virtually no fan base whatsoever. None. So Yahoo Sports had this headline today about this, and a lot of you aren't going to care about Jim Harbaugh, but I'm going to tell you the difference between the NFL and college coaching, and it's night and day. So Yahoo Sports, says, "Hey, Harbaugh is leaving Michigan. Why would he leave Michigan?" Something to that effect. He's leaving Michigan fresh off a national championship. Now think about all this stuff that's set up, and I think I can explain to you how financially ridiculous coaching at a football factory can be. So he has a 10-year offer from Michigan that was on his desk, has been on his desk since probably the day before they even played for the national championship. They probably scratched out a few things and added more the day after Michigan won the national championship. That's been sitting there. They even added a clause that would mean even if they got punished, were put on probation in some capacity, lost scholarships, were hit with financial penalties, practically anything, he would be granted immunity. So they just handed everything over to the guy. He would get paid at least $11 million a year. And he would have at least 10 years. And you know how that works. Every time you have a good year, they're going to add a few more years. So the guy easily could have made $11 to $12 million a year for the next 12 years coaching in Michigan. And let me explain the difference between coaching at a football factory like Michigan or Ohio State or Texas. The money offered to him at Michigan, just like the money offered to coaches at Texas, just like the money offered if you're at Ohio State, it goes further than the NFL. Okay, it's far less expensive, obviously, to live in any of those spots compared to where he's going now. You're given free cars. Your staff is given free cars. You're giving free club memberships, plural. You play golf, country clubs, wherever you want. You get free use of the jet most of the time. And you get ridiculous benefits for you and your family because they're state schools. Each year, if you coach at a football factory, each year you have built-in 8 to 9 wins. They're built in. They're baked in. You don't even have to show up, which he didn't because he was suspended more games than he coached in the regular season. You have built-in 8 to 9 wins at least every single season. There is far less pressure. And now that he's won a championship, he could have a 7-5 season, and there's less pressure. He's at no risk, would be at no risk. Steve Sarkisian went to championship at Texas. He's at no risk. Get whatever you want. Whatever you want. So people are thinking, well, gosh, why wouldn't you stay? Why wouldn't you keep it? Okay, here's what I think is the difference that I think people need to appreciate the difference. He'll probably be paid, I haven't seen the deal yet, but I think he'll be paid probably $10 million a year to coach the Chargers. Yes. It may be a 5-year deal. You may last 5 years. You have a couple bad years in there, they'll whack you. They don't care. But in the NFL, okay, everyone, no matter what they look like in September, you are 2 to 3 injuries away. 3 may be stretching it. Probably 2. You are 2 injuries away every single season from a 6 or 7 win season, and it doesn't matter who you are. That's how quickly you come back to the pack. That's how narrow the margin is in the NFL. He stays at Michigan. He has built-in 7 wins. In the NFL, you lose 2 important players, you might only win 6. The perks are not nearly what you get in college football. The media pressure is 10 or 20 times what he would face at Michigan. In the NFL, you have to show up at weekly news conferences or you get fined. He'll be living with a salary cap. There's no built-in advantages. The NFL doesn't have built-in advantages. You don't get to pay more for someone else. So he'll be living with a salary cap, of which the team he's going to is over the salary cap now. In fact, they're very much over the salary cap. And most of the money with the Chargers, and this is true of many franchises, most of the money is taken up by 4 to 5 players. Financially, coaching at Michigan or Texas is a far better deal financially over the long term. But the difference between the job and the job description, coaching in the NFL and coaching at a football factory, is pretty drastic. Listen to this. When you coach at a college football coaching factory, football factory, your job is primarily, now almost exclusively, but it's to sell to self-centered, pampered teenage stars and tell them everything they want to hear. That's what you do all day, every day. You tell self-centered, narcissistic, pampered teenage stars, you tell them whatever they want to hear. You promise, they're mostly lies, but you promise these same self-centered, pampered teenage stars and their families, you promise them whatever they want. Just tell them whatever they want to hear. That's what it is. You direct some staff member on your bloated football department staff, because these are the most bloated operations you could ever imagine. It's ridiculous how many bodies and hangers-on and VPs college football programs have. But football factories, not your average program, football factories. But you direct some staff member to make sure the rich men who give money get these self-centered, pampered teenage stars whatever they want and need financially. That's, again, I'm walking you through the job description. This is what you do. You hire a coaching staff based primarily on their ability to sell to self-centered, pampered teenage stars. You're not hiring the best football scientist. You're hiring the best salespeople who have the best contacts among self-centered, pampered teenage stars. You travel around. You have to travel around to speak to various alumni groups because they have a stake in your program. They have ownership in your program, and you have to go tell them what they like to hear. You get paid typically a ridiculous sum of money to do a weekly TV or radio show that is absolutely horrible. You have no business hosting a show or co-hosting a show or being on a show at all. You're terrible at it, but you're doing it because you get paid a ridiculous sum of money. The person hosting it acts like your best friend, and nobody watches or listens. They suck. They're the worst genre of media I can think of, coaches shows. But you get paid. In fact, they pay you far more than it's worth because it's not worth anything. It has no audience whatsoever. You convince the self-centered, pampered teenage star that you promised everything to they and their family. You have to now convince that person not to leave your program. That's part of the job too, a big part of the job. So you remember the kid that you promised everything in the beginning. You promised the family everything in the beginning. Well, now that kid says, I'm not getting to play as much. I'm not the star that you told me I would be. The stuff you promised me was going to happen isn't happening, and I'm pissed, and I'm going to go somewhere else. Now you have to turn around, and that same kid that you sold to before, you have to sell them again not to leave because they're whiny. Because you lied to them, probably. And you have a roster full of about 90 players. You have unlimited funds for a bloated coaching staff, and you spend about half your time doing football stuff. You're practically worshipped at the office when you're a football coach at a football factory. You have no bosses, except the rich guys. The university president, if you win, doesn't touch you. Jim Harbaugh could do anything. He could do anything to anybody, and he's untouchable. But the vast majority of that time is not football at all. Now, the NFL, First of all, you've got to understand about the NFL and guys that play in the NFL. And Harbaugh knows this. Look, Harbaugh played a long time. He coached in the NFL, was successful. He was an eyelash away from winning a Super Bowl. So he's not going into this clueless. So this is why I say a lot of college coaches, you could not pick them up out of the college environment and stick them in the NFL and have them have any clue whatsoever how it operates. Because in college, you are lying and promising self-centered, pampered teenagers everything you can think of. You just tell them whatever they want to hear. In the NFL, you don't say a lot. You know why? Because the players in the NFL, they will cut someone's heart out for a job. It's a beautiful thing and a terrifying thing. But, man, between the lines in professional football, nothing else matters. Those guys are trying to make a living, a really good living, and they will cut your heart out to get that second contract. You don't have to promise them a whole lot because they don't care. They want to work and they want the job. It's their life. They are playing for a second contract every time. And any one of you would do the same thing if you had, in many cases, you realize how short your lifespan is, how short your career is. Of course, you're going to cut someone's heart out for that second contract. That's how they operate. They're completely different than college players. Now they know that if they get that second contract, right, your first contract's, if you're lucky, 4 or 5 by mandate. You get that second one, you now survive to your late 20s, more than likely. Not always guaranteed. Remember, the average career is about 3.7 years. It's a completely different mindset. It's a completely different way of going to work. It's a completely different, college players are sold and promised things. NFL players aren't promised anything. Nothing. No one cares, right? No one cares. They're playing for a second contract, and then once they get that second contract, you're now dealing with a player that wants to be recognized as the best. This is why I tell you they really want to win. Once that second contract kicks in and you are practically set on a 6-7 year career, what matters is success. Coaching in the NFL is like prepping for a complicated legal case every single week. That's what coaching in the NFL is. You study, you cram, you look for every possible angle to get an advantage for that game. Every single week it's like that. The job is about the science, okay? College football is about telling people what they want to hear. Coaching in the NFL is about the science of the game and working like crazy to figure out the science of the game every single week. And the science is most of those players are really close. You got to find one thing that gives you an advantage every single week. And that's what you do. It's the science of the game. The job about the science of you and a coaching staff is finding one-on-one matchups, one-on-one advantages every single week. It's also about your management style to the most important employees. You know, I mean, how you talk to one guy is different than how you talk to another. People in management know this. You have to answer to a boss. In college football, Jim Harbaugh would answer to no one. He'll answer to no one. In the NFL, you will answer to the owner. You'll win or they'll run your ass out. They don't care. They don't care. In college football, when you're at a football factory, you own the place. You own the place. You have no bosses. You think you're the most important person on campus, and in some cases you probably are. In professional football, it's a smaller business. Money is an object, and the money matters to your boss. It's amazing how different it is. I mean, at places, football factories, you shoes and stuff is no object. And nothing. You don't think about what the stuff costs. In the NFL, there's an equipment guy, some trainers. It's a third of the staff, a fourth of the staff that Jim Harbaugh would have in Michigan. Money matters in the NFL a lot. Money matters to your boss. How you spend the money matters to your boss. So you have to deal with the finances of every single day. You have to deal with the financial realities of a salary cap, and you have to work with a GM to navigate it. You have to constantly in the NFL be ready to find players when injuries happen, and they do all the time. They do all the time. You have to be ready at any given notice to find a player. The media grind is brutal. Jim Harbaugh could pop off. He could hide from. He could ignore. He could act like a jackass when he's the emperor in Michigan. In the NFL, they're not going to care. You have to show up at a news conference and you have to deal with it. Every week. Every week. And in the NFL, this is what a lot of guys, this is why it appeals to someone like Harbaugh. He gets to be the football nerd. He gets to be the football scientist now. Every week, you're a bad break or an injury away from losing, and it doesn't matter who you are. At Michigan, they could screw up countless times and still win 7 games, 8 games, maybe even more than that. In the NFL, a guy or two gets hurt, you lose that day. You make a stupid mistake, you lose that day. Coaching in the NFL is completely different than the college game. It's a completely different world. It's a completely different mindset. It's the accountability level is completely different. And I understand now why a lot of guys, especially in the college world of today, it's about lying. It's about lying to people, and it's about handing out money. And it makes sense that the NFL would appeal to a college coach because you finally get to go do the football thing. You get to finally go and try a case. That's what the NFL is. And the margin of error is brutal. It's brutal. That's why those guys look like hell. The margin of error is so small every week. Every week. There are no built-in advantages. So it's kicked around all day. A lot of people talking about it. I kind of agree with this. So I think this is on ESPN this morning. I think this is Paul Feinbaum talking about, I mentioned this a while back, that I think at some point Michigan is like, thank you, we're winning, but man, you're a pain in the butt.
What does this mean for the Big Ten? It is a fascinating time for the Big Ten Conference as they bring in the West Coast schools. Here is Michigan, which has been the best team in the Big Ten now the last 3 years, been in the playoff, wins the championship. What does this mean?
It's a big blow, but it's also a relief in some circles, Greeny, because Jim Harbaugh brought so much controversy. That NCAA investigation is still out there. It has 2 prongs to it. Without Harbaugh, I think it will abate. They'll still get some sort of sanction, but I don't think it will be nearly as serious. And the other part of it is the pressure. Sharon Moore will likely get the job in a couple of days once the legal time period has ended. He did a phenomenal job. He was the coach for 6 games last season. He handled himself very well. But it's also worth remembering the road that Jim Harbaugh took to get to this point. 2 years ago, exactly, Greeny, remember he went to Minnesota to interview. He didn't get the job, and then to get back in the good graces of Michigan officials, he said, that's the last time I will ever interview with the NFL. We saw how much Jim Harbaugh's word is worth, and here he is leaving. But the pressure in the Big Ten, interestingly, won't be on Harbaugh's successor, Sharon Moore. It will be on Ryan Day because of having lost to Harbaugh 3 straight years. He is the beneficiary. He has the best team in the Big Ten, but he better not lose to a first-year coach at Michigan.
Yeah, I've thought all along Michigan's best defense, even though they offered the guy a contract, they promised him immunity, I thought all along that Michigan's best defense, and maybe a reasonable defense, was, okay. He cheated. He cheated a lot. We had no idea. The people around here had no idea. We got rid of the guy, the porn star guy, and all the other people that were doing the cheating too. Look, take it easy on us. He's gone. He's out the door. And I think that defense is probably pretty reasonable. And I agree with Feinbaum that Jim Harbaugh had so much baggage. It's not going to matter in the NFL. I mean, he doesn't need to cheat. He can't get away with it. I mean, the NFL doesn't tolerate that kind of BS. So, yeah, in some ways, it is a convenient out for the entire Big Ten and for Michigan that the guy that was a constant pain in the butt, a constant slime ball, is out, and maybe they can avoid the sanctions. And, a lot of people think, I'm not sure I agree, a lot of people think that ultimately the more stuff that was found, the more likely it would be that they would lose victories from this past season. I think the argument now is, hey, don't do that to us. That's not fair to these players. Let us keep our championship. The guy that did all that stuff, he's in L.A. now.